Once upon a time, so the story goes, the thunder roared, the wind howled madly across the night sky. The heavens were dark, heavy, like a curtain drawn over the world. And the small, fragile humans below trembled, yearning for a single ray of light, a single drop of water, a single glimmer of hope. The drought had dragged on, the rivers had vanished, the earth cracked open like the skin of a dying dragon. And in that darkness, there lay a colossal monster, hoarding all the life-giving waters of the universe. His name was Vritra, the dragon of darkness, the devourer of rivers, who held the waters in his belly as if they were a treasure none could touch. People whispered that even the gods feared him, for he was not only mighty, but also cold, eternal like the night itself. The world sank into thirst and despair, and without a savior, mankind would wither away in the burning drought. And then, from the lofty heights of the sky, another sound arose, not the growl of a beast, not the hiss of a dragon, but a booming laugh, the laugh of Indra. Indra, the king of gods, the slayer of Vritrasura, whose laughter shook the foundations of the cosmos. The very air through which he moved was charged with power, each step leaving a resonant boom that echoed like distant thunder. His eyes, twin pools of celestial light, seemed to hold the wisdom of ages past and the promise of a future yet to come. In his hand, he held the vritra, a thunderbolt of pure divine energy. And as he stood poised on the edge of the battle, ready to face the dragon head-on, there was an aura of invincibility around him, quiet confidence that resonated with the courage of 1,000 suns. But it was not just brute force that made Indra formidable. His strategic mind was as sharp as the razor-edged winds that played through his flowing locks. He knew that defeating a monster as cunning and powerful as Vritrasura would not be a simple feat. So while the mortals below looked up to him with a desperate hope, Indra was busy strategizing, planning, calculating the best way to end this cosmic drought. And as the night wore on, and the first hints of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, Indra made his move. Now, when the gods planned to do something, it wasn't merely a thought or a wish that set things in motion. It was a resolve, a decision that carried the weight of their divine purpose. And so it was that Indra, with a warrior's focus and a leader's determination, took off into the darkening sky. Each flap of his celestial wings stirred the winds, carrying with it the faint echo of his divine purpose. He chased after Vritrasura, racing across the canvas of the night sky, determined to bring an end to the drought that plagued the mortal realm. Now, Vritrasura was not just immensely powerful, he was also immensely cunning. The dragon had ruled over the skies for so long that he knew every twist and turn of the atmosphere. Every current and crosswind that could aid or hinder his flight. He was a master of aerial combat, able to dodge and weave in ways that defied the very laws of physics. But Indra was no ordinary pursuer. He was relentless. And the urgency of his mission fueled his every move. The people of the earth looked up at the sky, their hopes pinned on the valiant god as he raced against time to end the drought and restore the rains. As the chase continued, the sky became their battleground. Bolts of lightning flashed, illuminating the dark canvas above, as Indra unleashed his celestial weapons, each strike aimed to weaken the dragon and bring him down. But Vritrasura was elusive, dodging each attack with a mocking grace that infuriated the god. The dragon taunted Indra, his voice echoing with arrogance. "Cannot defeat me, O Indra? I am the devourer of rivers, the master of the skies. You may think yourself mighty, but before my power, you are but a flickering flame." Despite these taunts, Indra pressed on, his determination hardening with each dodged attack. He refused to let the dragon's words get to him, knowing that the fate of the world hung in the balance. But Vritrasura was not just powerful and cunning. He was also immortal, or so he believed. With each passing moment, the dragon felt the numbing certainty that he was trapped by his own immortality. To exist forever without water, without the one thing that gave life meaning, was a torment of its own kind. Yet he clung on, hoping that somehow he would outlast Indra's patience, that the relentless god would tire and give up the chase. But Indra had no intention of doing so. He saw the pain in the dragon's eyes, but he also saw the chance to end the drought. As the battle raged on, the stakes became clearer. It was a fight between two forces, one that brought life, the other that devoured it. The world watched, held its breath, praying for a swift end to this celestial duel. And then it happened. Just when it seemed that vritra had cornered and exhausted the dragon grew still. His chest heaved with a final shuddering breath. And as the last echoes of his roars faded into the vast emptiness, the dragon collapsed. The skies darkened for a moment, as if in mourning, and then a deafening silence descended. The world stood still, unable to believe that the tyrant was finally vanquished. In that moment, the weight of the dragon's defeat settled upon the land like a tangible thing. The sun, as if awakened from a deep slumber, peeked through the parting clouds, casting a tentative glow upon the thirsty earth. A gentle breeze, a harbinger of change, swept across the parched landscape, carrying with it the faintest hint of moisture. And then, as if responding to some unseen signal, the clouds gathered, forming dark shapes on the horizon. They swelled and loomed, promising the deluge that had been so desperately awaited. The first fat drops fell, hesitant at first, then with increasing fervor. The heavens opened up, releasing a torrent of water that cascaded upon the earth. Rivers that had shrunk to trickles widened once more. The parched land drank deeply, its cracked skin healing with each passing moment. The world rejoiced. The plants unfurled their leaves in gratitude. The animals emerged from their hiding places, blinking in the sudden sunlight. The humans, their faces upturned, laughed and danced in the rain, their prayers and hopes taking the form of glistening dewdrops on the petals of flowers. And as the rain continued its life-giving dance, it carried with it the sweet melody of hope, the rhythm of renewal. The world, once on the brink of despair, now throbbed with vitality. Its wounds healed, its spirit revived. Have you ever heard the name of Indra? Let me guess. You must have. Now close your eyes for a moment and picture him. What do you see? A muscular man astride a white horse, brandishing a thunderbolt and beating a drum. Right, but let's be honest, that image is just a pale imitation of the real thing. Here in today's episode, we will delve deep into the myths and legends to truly understand who Indra really is. Prepare to be amazed by the tales of his valor and his might. Who is Indra? He is not just a god of rain and thunder, but also the embodiment of courage, strength, and victory. His deeds are legendary, and his powers are truly awesome. Join us as we explore the world of ancient Hindu mythology and discover the true meaning of Indra. So let's get started. Once upon a time, there lived an emperor named Muchakunda. He ruled over the kingdom of Kashi, and he was known throughout the land for his wisdom and his righteousness. But despite his many virtues, the emperor had one fatal flaw. He was cursed. By mistake, he had killed a sage in a hunting accident, and as a result, he was doomed to die a terrible death. Muchakunda tried everything to break the curse, but nothing worked. He consulted with the wisest sages, performed countless sacrifices, and even offered his own life in exchange for a better fate. But the curse was too powerful, and it seemed that there was no escape from it. However, the emperor refused to give up hope. He remembered that his grandfather had once been saved from death by the gods, and so he prayed to them for help. In his desperation, Muchakunda made a vow. If the gods saved him from the curse, he would give up his throne and live the rest of his life as a wandering ascetic. Little did he know that his wish would lead him on an incredible journey and change his life forever. Indra, the king of gods, took pity on Muchkond and decided to help him. But instead of simply breaking the curse, Indra decided to put Muchkond to the test. He sent a beautiful apsara named Tilatama to distract him and tempt him with her beauty. If Muchkond could resist her advances and remain focused on his spiritual path, then the curse would be lifted. But if he gave in to temptation, the curse would only become stronger. Tilatama approached Muchakunda, and his senses were immediately overwhelmed by her beauty. She danced and sang for him, and her mere presence filled him with desire. But despite the temptation, Muchakunda remained steadfast. He recognized Tilatama for what she was, a divine test of his resolve. As the days passed, Tilatama grew frustrated by his resistance. She tried every trick in her book, but Muchakunda remained unmoved. Finally, she gave up and disappeared. Just as suddenly as she had appeared, realizing that he had passed the test, Muchakunda continued on his spiritual journey, seeking out the most reclusive sages and meditating in the deepest forests. Years turned into decades, and still he persevered. Finally, the time came when the curse was broken, and Muchakunda emerged from his years of seclusion as a transformed being. He was no longer the same man who had made the vow all those years ago. He was now a true ascetic, free from the bonds of desire and attachment. Indra was pleased with Muchakunda's perseverance, and he rewarded him by granting him the boon of immortality. Muchakunda became known as Muchakunda, the victorious, and his story became a legend. A tale of how one man, as unwavering determination and control over his desires, can overcome even the most formidable of challenges. The gods were preparing for a great battle against the demons. The stakes were high, and the outcome would determine the fate of the universe. On one side there were the gods, led by their king Indra, who wielded lightning bolts and thunderous roars. On the other side were the demons, fierce and relentless, ready to unleash their dark magic and consume the world in chaos. In the midst of this impending doom, the gods were in a panic. They were strong and brave, but they knew that the demons were too powerful to be defeated in open battle. They needed a secret weapon, something that would give them the edge they needed to win the war. That's when someone stepped forward. A young, unassuming warrior named Brihaspati. He had a plan, a risky, unorthodox plan that involved getting the demons drunk and incapacitating them before they could cause any damage. The other gods were skeptical, but desperate times called for desperate measures, and so they agreed to go along with Brihaspati's plan. They set out to find the most potent liquor in the three worlds, a drink so strong and intoxicating that it could fell even the mightiest demon. After a long and arduous search, they finally found it, a magical elixir hidden in a cave guarded by fearsome creatures. It was a drink unlike any other, brewed with celestial herbs and infused with the power of the gods. The warriors returned to their camp, and the preparations began. The plan was risky, but the gods were desperate, and they had to try anything they could to save themselves from the demons. The first step was to lure the demons away from the battlefield and into a trap. The gods disguised themselves as frightened civilians and pretended to flee from the demons, leading them deep into the forest. Meanwhile, they prepared a feast fit for a king, complete with tables laden with food and goblets filled with the most potent wine. When the demons arrived, they were weary from the chase and eager to rest. The gods greeted them warmly and invited them to join in the feast. The demons, suspicious but intrigued, agreed. And that's when the real trap was sprung. The gods plied the demons with food and drink, and soon they were too drunk to resist. One by one, they fell to the ground, sleeping soundly and completely defenseless. The gods wasted no time. They attacked while the demons were vulnerable, and soon the battle was over. The demons were imprisoned, and the gods were victorious. The secret weapon, the powerful liquor, had done its job. Brihaspati's plan had worked, and the universe was safe once again. But the story doesn't end there. In the aftermath of the battle, the gods were divided over what to do with the captured demons. Some wanted to kill them, but others argued that they should be given a chance to reform. Brihaspati, however, had a different idea. He suggested that the demons should be put to work, that they should be forced to build great structures and perform menial tasks, until they had atoned for their sins. The gods agreed, and the demons were put to work. But as time went on, the demons grew resentful. They toiled day and night, and they hated the gods for their servitude. Soon, they were plotting a new rebellion, and this time, they were more cunning than before. The gods were caught off guard, and they were forced to flee. They hid in the mortal realm, disguised as humans, and the demons took over the heavens. But the gods weren't giving up. They waited patiently for their chance to strike back, and when it came, they were ready. The gods used their knowledge of the mortal world to outsmart the demons, and once again, they were victorious. The demons were banished from the heavens, and the gods reclaimed their thrones. But this time, they were more cautious. They knew that the demons would be back, and they needed to be prepared. So they turned to Brihaspati for help. They asked him to train a new generation of warriors, to teach them the arts of war and make sure that the demons would never take over again. And so Brihaspati began his training. He assembled the bravest and most skilled warriors from all across the universe, and he put them through rigorous drills and exercises. He taught them how to fight in groups, how to use their weapons, and most importantly, how to exploit the weaknesses of their enemies. The training was hard and grueling, but the warriors were determined to succeed. They wanted to be the best, and they knew that there was no room for failure. As the years passed, the warriors became a formidable force. The gods were confident that they were ready for whatever the demons could throw at them. The next battle was inevitable, and the gods knew that they would have to face the demons once again. But this time, they were ready. They were armed with powerful weapons and led by skilled warriors, and they knew every trick in the book. When the demons attacked, the gods were ready. They fought bravely and skillfully, exploiting the demons' weaknesses and using their strengths to their advantage. The battle was fierce and intense, but in the end, the gods were victorious. The demons were defeated, and the universe was safe once again. And so, the legend of Brihaspati, the teacher of the gods, lived on, a reminder of the importance of preparation and skill in the face of any challenge. This was the story of how Indra got drunk before the battle. The sun had vanished from the sky, not fallen into the sea, nor been devoured by an insatiable crocodile, but simply vanished. As if someone had snuffed out its flame, the world was plunged into unending night. Rivers ran dry, crops withered and died, and over all the parched and dying land, a great fear arose. It spread like wildfire through the hearts of the Devas and the Danavas, stirring whispers of doom. The Danavas cowered in their dark lairs, while the Devas held council after council, devising strategies and plans. But all their efforts ended in failure. Nothing could break the curse of endless night. Nothing could force the sun back into the heavens, for it was an ancient and terrible power that held the world in its thrall, a primordial being of immense power named Vritra. Now Vritra had lived for countless ages before the birth of gods or men, a spirit of drought and famine, of death and silence and darkness. He had dwelt in the far north in a cave of ice, where cold winds blew and never a ray of sunshine fell. But something stirred within him, some ancient instinct, and he left his home to seek new hunting grounds. As he journeyed south, the earth cracked and split beneath his tread. And wherever he camped, the waters dried up and the crops withered away. Villages turned to dust, and men and beasts alike perished. Yet Vritra was not content with all this destruction. There were greater things he sought, vaster spoils he wished to claim. And so, when he heard of the shining cities of the Devas, he conceived a plan of conquest. One day, as the Devas and Danavas feasted together in the great city of Amravati, Vritra crept in unseen and stole away their sacred fire. Then he climbed to the highest mountain in the world, Mount Meru, and built there a fortress of iron and stone. Next he let loose terrible demons, the offspring of his own dark essence. And they flew to every corner of the world, spreading disease and pestilence and shrouding all in endless night.
Ow.
The gods were trapped in their heavenly arbors, the humans in their dark houses. Only the wind sighed through the empty streets and moaned among the barren trees. Everywhere, hope withered and died. Even the mighty Agni, lord of the fire, could not pierce the thick darkness. And so the Devas called upon the last remaining hope, the storm god Indra. Now Indra was famed as the slayer of Vritra, a title won long ago when he slew a former demon of drought and famine. Yet this was no ordinary Vritra. This was the mightiest of the demons, the embodiment of chaos and constraint and death and silence. Could Indra really face him? Was he really strong enough to slay such a terrible monster? As the Deva army set out, fear gnawed at their hearts, for they knew what was at stake. If Indra failed, darkness would swallow the world forever, and all life would wither and die. They walked past fields of the dead, their crops turning to dust in the endless night, their hands calloused from too much toil and worry etched deep in their brows. When at last they reached Mount Meru, the sight before them filled them with dread. Atop the peak stood a fortress of solid iron and dark magic, wreathed in clouds and lightning. Around its base coiled giant serpents, their many heads rearing up like dark phantoms. And atop the highest tower sat Vritra, surrounded by his followers, each more hideous and terrifying than the last. But Indra paused not, for he was drunk with the power of the Soma, his mind clear and sharp, his muscles corded and taut like those of a divine stallion. Beside him marched his two generals, the twin Ashvins, their horses neighing loud and impatient, and behind them came the rest of the Deva host, each one eager to prove his courage and win renown. Thus they reached the foot of the mountain and began to make ready for battle. First, the twin Ashvins unleashed their swift arrows, piercing the darkness and scattering the demons. Then came the Maruts, the wind god's sons, howling like wolves and tearing into the enemy ranks with tooth and nail. And all the while, the other gods fought valiantly, hurling thunderbolts and shooting arrows, smiting demons and sending them reeling back to the dark fortress. Yet even as the battle raged, a great fear grew in Indra's heart. For though the Maruts fought bravely and the others followed close behind, only he could slay the main demon Vritra. Yet he knew not where to strike, how to pierce the monster's skin and end his reign of terror. Then suddenly, just as the battle seemed about to turn against the Devas, the rain god Pusan reached the fray. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he said to Indra, "What ails thee, O king of the Devas? Why dost thou stand there like a wise deer caught in a hunter's snare?" Hearing this, Indra poured out his heart and told the rain god of his fear and uncertainty. But Pusan only smiled and said, "Fear not, O Indra, for I have found the way to slay the demon Vritra. Listen well to my words and follow my advice." And so the rain god took his place among the fighting men and guided their every move. First he told them to free all the captive maidens, who'd been taken during the demons' raids, for their tears had watered the dry earth and brought forth tender shoots. Next he commanded them to untie the fetters from the trees which the demons had bound. And twisted and lo, the moment those bonds were broken, the trees sprouted fresh leaves and blossoms. And finally he ordered them to loosen the ropes from the clouds, which had been keeping the rains from falling. As soon as the clouds were set free, torrents of water poured down from the sky, washing away the dirt and the dust and the corpses. Meanwhile, Vritra grew increasingly agitated, for he sensed the end of his dark reign approaching. In a rage, he let loose a bolt of lightning, which crackled and hissed as it hurtled towards Indra. But the storm god stood firm and smashed the bolt into smithereens. Then, taking aim, he shot back a thunderbolt of his own, which struck Vritra's fortress and shattered it to dust. As the fortress crumbled, the mountains trembled and the earth shook. And out of the swirling dust stepped Vritra himself, his form towering and terrible. His eyes blazed like hot coals, his tusks glistened like ivory swords, and his breath reeked of death and decay. With a roar, he charged at Indra, his tusks bared and his claws extended. But while the other gods still trembled, while mortals still despaired, only Indra rose, dare, chested eyes aflame, lips still wet with the foam of Soma. He stared into the darkness, into the coils of Vritra, and roared, "I shall tear you asunder, rip open the sky, release the rivers, and return life to this world." His voice shook the heavens, his cry made the earth itself tremble. But remember, this was no ordinary battle. This was the clash of light against darkness, water against drought, hope against despair. Vritra was not only a beast of flesh, he was the embodiment of chaos, of constraint, of death and silence. And Indra, though drunk on Soma, though burning with wrath, faced a danger beyond measure. For if he failed, light itself would vanish forever from the world of men. He leaped forward, meeting Vritra's charge with his own. Their weapons clashed, sending sparks flying and deafening the echoes of the sky. And for a moment, neither god nor demon could gain the upper hand. They fought on, battling blow for blow, until at last Indra felt his strength beginning to fail. He stumbled, his arms grew heavy, his vision blurred. But then he remembered all the suffering he had come to end, all the lives he had come to save. Summoning every last drop of strength, he roared again and thrust his weapon forward. It found its mark, piercing Vritra's skin and sending him reeling back. The demon gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief, his fangs clattering to the ground. With a last mighty effort, Indra pulled his weapon free. Vritra stumbled, crashed to his knees, and collapsed into a heap at the foot of the mountain. And as he lay there dying, the sun peeked over the horizon, chasing away the endless night and bathing the world in golden light. Then from the depths of Vritra's crushed and broken body, a single drop of blood trickled out. It fell to the ground and burst into bloom, becoming a lotus flower, pure white and radiant. And from that flower, fully grown and radiant, arose a beautiful woman. She had the gentle eyes of a dove, the flowing locks of a goddess, and a grace and beauty that made the very mountains tremble. She looked around her and saw the devastation wrought by the battle, the dead bodies strewn across the fields. The villages burnt and destroyed, the crops withered and dead, and filled with compassion, she bent down and touched the earth. Where her fingers touched, the soil sprang back to life. 8. The crops grew heavy with fruit, and the flowers bloomed in vibrant colors. Then with a final touch she brought the dead back to life. They stirred and stretched and blinked, wondering at the sudden return of sunlight and birdsong. As for Vritra, when he learned who the woman was, he had no regrets. You see, she was none other than Ushas, the personification of dawn. And when Vritra died, his blood spilled to earth and gave her human form. So he died content in the knowledge that his sacrifice had birthed the first rays of hope in the endless night. In the beginning, there was nothing but darkness. No sun, no moon, no stars, no light at all. There was just darkness. And in this darkness something stirred, something monstrous and terrible, a giant serpent called Vritra. His head touched the earth and his tail coiled around the sky. He blocked the sun and kept the world locked in eternal darkness. So it remained until one day a mighty warrior named Indra came down from heaven to slay the beast. But when he arrived, he found that Vritra was too strong to defeat in battle. Instead, Indra did something unexpected. He befriended Vritra, offering him friendship and gifts, and requested that the demon allow the sun to shine once more. But Vritra refused, preferring darkness to light, war to peace. So Indra drew his sword and cut off the serpent's head. With a final roar, the monster fell, releasing the sky and allowing sunlight to touch the earth for the first time. Then Indra called the other gods and humans together and proclaimed, "Let every creature that looks up to the sky remember this day. Let every creature that drinks sweet Soma remember my name." That is how we know the story of the first sacrifice, and how Indra earned the title of the most powerful warrior among the gods. This is a summary of the very first hymn of the Rigveda. Now what? Well, let me explain. This is the longest hymn in the Rigveda, and therefore the oldest text of world literature. It tells of the birth of the universe, of the creation of man, and of how the gods helped our ancestors to achieve victory over the demons and the elemental forces of nature. In fact, this first hymn alone contains 24 different myths. You could say that these 24 stories are the first 24 chapters of what will be a total of 27 chapters, spread across 10 books or mandalas. Each book has its own unique style and purpose, each book teaching something about everything and everything about something. It's almost like the whole of human knowledge put into a single book. Now, if you want to dig deeper into each of the 10 books of the Rigveda, then you have come to the right place, because in this series we will do exactly that. We will read, discuss, and explore the deepest wisdom contained in the oldest book of Hindu scripture. Our journey begins with the heavens cracking with thunder and lightning. 8. The sky splits apart and outsteps Indra, the supreme deity and king of the gods. He hurls himself down like a thunderbolt from the peak of the sky. His brilliance is such that even the bright rays of the sun become dim by comparison. As he descends to earth, he shakes the firmament like a horse that rears up on its hind legs, snorting and pawing the ground in anticipation of a great race. But who is our warrior god facing in battle? What evil is he conquering? The answer is Vritra. The word means darkness or cloud. In later Vedic texts, he is described as a giant serpent, sometimes depicted as having 10 heads. He raises his massive head up to the sky, and his mountain-like body uncoils, blocking the sun. Guess? As Vritra reared up against Indra, the waters rushed to his aid and formed 7 mighty rivers. They were embodiments of primal chaos, primordial floods that threatened to extinguish all life and order on earth. These floods, known as the Sarasvatis, would appear again in later texts as the 7 great rivers of the Indus Valley civilization, perhaps representing actual rivers that played an important role in the culture and economy of those ancient people. But as far as our hymn is concerned, they merely rushed to Vritra's aid before being defeated and absorbed by the sun god. For now, our attention is focused on the 2 central figures of the myth, the god of light and the demon of darkness, the bringer of order and the bringer of chaos. Their fates are now intertwined in an epic struggle that will determine the fate of existence itself. And so the fated duel begins. In one version of the myth, Indra fights for 9 nights against the mighty Vritra, striking blow after blow upon the demon's chest until finally the serpent collapses. Other versions claim that the battle lasted for 365 days, a year-long conflict between light and dark. This may have originally been a solar myth, where Indra represents the sun and Vritra, the darkness of night. But the Rigveda, which was compiled several centuries after these myths arose, presents them as fully developed religious narratives with deep cosmic significance. To understand what happens next, we need to turn to another ancient Vedic text called the Shatapatha Brahmana. Here we learn that at the start of the battle, Indra was unable to defeat Vritra because he had drunk the Soma, a magical drink made from the moon plant that gives immortality to those who consume it. Without the power of the Soma, Indra would be no match for the invincible Vritra. And so Indra sets out to steal some of the precious drink from the nearby Gandharva, who are said to guard the plants that grow under the moonlight. They refuse, however, saying Soma belongs to all creatures, but the Gandharvas possess it in their care. If any god desires it, let him approach us willingly, and we will give it to him. And so Indra does just that. He approaches the Gandharvas in disguise, pretending to be a mere mortal man. He says, "I am just a weak human, and cannot approach the holy plants without your help. Please show me where the moon grows so I can gather some of it and make the Soma." At first the Gandharvas refuse, saying, "Do you think we are fools? Why should we help a man?" But Indra persists, claiming that he is already exhausted and needs rest. And so the Gandharvas take pity on the disguised god and lead him to the secret valley where the Soma grows. As soon as he sees it, however, Indra changes his tune. Instead of asking for permission to harvest the plant, he immediately seizes the Soma and drinks it down, becoming invincible. Then he returns to his original form and faces the Gandharvas, declaring, "You were careless to give the Soma to anyone who asked for it. Now you will pay the price." Though the Gandharvas plead for mercy, promising to guard the Soma from now on and never to trust a man again, Indra kills them all except for one named Apcha. He spares Apcha because he warned him not to drink the Soma in excess, lest he forget his friends. And so Apcha survives and lives on to play an important role in future Vedic texts. Indra now returns to face Vritra and easily defeats the demon. Having drunk the nectar of immortality, he was unstoppable. Right. With Vritra slain, the waters retreat and the sun shines down for the first time, bathing the earth in light. Rivers flow through the warm rays of sunshine, and the world is brought to life. Indra calls all the gods and humans together and proclaims, "Let every creature that looks up to the sky remember this day. Let every creature that drinks sweet Soma remember my name." And so it is that Indra becomes the supreme god of the Vedic pantheon. He is the lord of heaven and earth. He is the giver of rain and the slayer of demons. He is the friend of man and the terror of the wicked. He is the god of strength and courage, of victory and prosperity. And now he stands triumphant before his assembled followers, accepting their praise and worship. He accepts fragrant ghee and rich oblations. He accepts horses, chariots, and weapons. He accepts prayers and hymns and sacrifices. All these gifts are given freely and joyfully because all these gifts honor the divine warrior. Above all else, Indra loves to receive the Soma, the drink of immortality. Of all the drinks on earth, this is the most precious draught. When the gods prepare the Soma, they call out to Indra, begging him to accept it with pleasure. They offer it to him with reverence and devotion, because the more they honor the warrior god, the more his favor they will receive. And so the gods and men feast and make merry together. They sing and dance and celebrate the triumph of light over dark, of order over chaos, of gods over demons. They rejoice and give thanks to Indra, the supreme leader and greatest hero among the gods. So ends the first hymn of the Rigveda, the oldest text of world literature. It tells the story of a battle between the gods and demons, between light and dark, between order and chaos. It tells of a world without light and the heroic efforts of a brave warrior to restore it. It teaches us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for deliverance. And that even when all seems lost, there is always someone willing to stand up and fight for what is right. If you enjoyed today's reading, then please don't forget to share for more mythology and ancient wisdom. What is this place? A wasteland of sand, of sun-bleached bones and twisted metal? What happened here? Most importantly, will it happen again? Well, let's start at the beginning. That day the heavens were heavy, like a vast lid turned upside down. There was no dawn, no dusk, only one suffocating blackness, spread across the earth like a colossal mourning cloth. Light itself seemed erased from the universe. People stretched their hands before their faces and saw nothing, as though they had been buried alive in an endless cave. I wake up and it's already nighttime. I look over to my alarm clock and it's still charging. Of course it is. That's why it's so damn bright. My phone is dead. Power must be out because it's already midnight and there's still no moon. But where is everyone? I call out, Mom, Dad, anyone home? My parents have always been overly cautious about things like weather. Maybe they went to stay at Grandma's. Wait, what about Toby? He's probably outside looking for me. I run outside. There's no wind, but I can feel the air move around me. I look above. It's like there's a wall between the bottom of the clouds and the top of the mountains, blocking any moonlight from coming through. All the birds are gone. The usual sounds of the night are absent. Even the crickets have gone silent. It's then that I realize the sounds of the night aren't crickets at all. They're the frogs in the river. I run to the bank of the river. It's bone dry. Where's the river? Where's the stream? I search all around, but there's no sign of water anywhere. Everything's cracked and dry. The riverbed is just like a wasteland. The entire forest is like a graveyard. The dry leaves crunch under my feet, and I think about how this must be what it feels like to walk in winter, only it's summer. I continue walking into the forest. Is anyone else out there? Why isn't anyone outside? Then I see them. The villagers are all gathered in the square in front of the town hall. Everyone's face is filled with fear, worry, or grief. Where's Toby? I ask my mom. We've been looking for you, honey, she says, hugging me tight. We were worried sick. Should never have been out alone in this weather. What's going on? I ask. She looks over her shoulder at the mayor, who's talking with my dad, shakes his head sadly. It seems we won't get any rain anytime soon, he said, or maybe ever. My heart sinks. No rain? What does that mean? My mom holds me tighter. It means we have to conserve the water we have left, she says softly. We need to ration it if we want it to last. How long will it last? I ask. She pulls away from me and takes my hand. Let's go home, she says. We need to prepare. As we walk home, I see that every house has a line of buckets outside. I didn't notice before, but the roads are also filled with them. All our neighbors are taking the water from their wells and storing it in buckets. We do the same, and I'm just starting to get a little scared. No rain. It's been raining every day for as long as I can remember. How could it not rain for more than a few days? What would happen then? Over the next few weeks, the sun keeps shining brightly while the river stays dry and the crops die in the fields. Birds fall from the sky, exhausted and thirsty. Some people come across dead deer in the woods, their tongues swollen and hanging out of their mouths. We keep collecting rainwater, but we have to use it carefully. Baths become rare luxuries. We brush our teeth with water mixed in a bucket. We wash our clothes by dipping them in water and scrubbing them with sand instead of soap. The water in the buckets lasts longer, but eventually it runs out. And when that happens, we all run to the hills on the edge of town. There we collect dewdrops from the plants. We put towels over bushes, pull grass to form puddles, and cover stones to catch the morning moisture. But the sun rises higher and higher and soon sucks the moisture out of everything again. So we have to go back empty-handed, and then it gets worse. When the days grow hotter and longer, people start getting sick. Their skin turns gray and wrinkled like old dried fruit. Their lips crack. First it's just a trickle, but soon they can't stop bleeding. Many of the villagers fall ill, and some of them die. People who used to laugh a lot now stand silently staring into the distance, their eyes blank and distant. Others, however, are angry. Angry at the sky, angry at the river, angry at the mayor, angry at each other. Fights break out more often. There's nothing to fight about. There's no solution. Then one day a man disappears. One day he was there, laughing loudly, joking around and playing checkers with my dad. And the next day he wasn't. His wife told us that he just walked away from the village into the forest and hasn't been seen since. At first we laughed. We thought it was a joke. But when he didn't show up the next day either, we started to get scared. Was he crazy? Did he think the river would magically reappear? Or did he find a way out of the valley? Our fears are confirmed when another person disappears. This time it's a young woman who we've seen crying every day by the river. One moment she was there, her shoulders shaking with sobs, and the next she was gone. More and more people leave. Each time someone disappears, more questions pop up. Is there life somewhere beyond the forest? Will we find water if we follow the river's path? Why does the sky hate us? Fear turns into desperation, and finally, the desperation drives us away. One by one, we leave our homes behind. Most people head east toward the mountains. They believe there must be water on the other side, so we join them. For days we trudge along, our feet raw and bleeding. The blisters have burst, the skin has peeled, and now the sand rubs against raw nerves. But there's no road here. We're not walking on a street, a dirt road, or a gravel road. We're walking on sand, on dunes. The wind blows sand into our faces, sand covers our clothes, sand clogs our hair. The sun beats down on us. Our bodies ache. We're hungry, thirsty, tired, and we don't know where we're going. Then I see it, a black line against the pale sky. Hope surges through me. Maybe it's a river. Maybe we'll find water after all. As we approach, I can make out the shapes of rocks and sand, cracked and bleached white by the sun. It's a dried-up riverbed. The sky has swallowed the river, too. There's no point in continuing. We're better off turning back. We trudge on, fighting against the wind. And then we collapse right there in the sand, defeated. We lie there watching the sky, waiting for the end. We're not afraid anymore. We're just tired. The sun sinks lower and lower, paints the sky red, orange, yellow, and finally plunges the world into darkness. I curl up into a ball, pull my knees to my chest, and close my eyes. For a moment, I feel something wet on my cheek. Is it a tear? Is the sky finally cracked open? Or is it just the sand? I don't care. Let the sky cry. This is a story about an ancient war, one that reshaped the world. You see, everyone knew this was no ordinary drought. No, this was the punishment of Vritra, the dragon of darkness, the devourer of all rivers. In legend, Vritra was not merely vast. He was darkness made to breathe. His body stretched the length of mountain ranges. With one coil, he could crush a valley. His scales were black as cursed stone, slimy as ancient reefs. His eyes blazed red, deep like two pits of fire. A single glance enough to freeze the bravest in terror. He need not kill. Merely by clutching the rivers in his belly, the world withered. Vritra was like a miser, clutching his treasure chest, never letting go. Except his treasure was not gold, but water, and water was life itself. People whispered, Vritra is not just a beast. He is despair itself, wearing the form of a dragon. A long, long time ago, when the earth was still wet behind the ears, it was a very different place. Back then, there were no dams holding back the rivers, no concrete channels to direct their flow. The rivers meandered through the land as they pleased, overflowing their banks whenever they felt like it. Floods were a fact of life, but people didn't mind, because the floods brought them the most precious gift of all. Water for growing crops, water for drinking, and water for sustaining life. All the rivers in the world were free to roam and free to give. There was more than enough for everyone. So humans and animals lived in perfect harmony with nature. It was an idyllic time. Then came Vritra. Where it came from, no one knows. Some say he crawled out of the primordial ocean. Others claim he emerged from the belly of a dead star. The dragon of darkness coiled himself around the rivers, constricting them, squeezing them until the water stopped flowing. Then he sealed off the rivers with his mighty jaws and turned the taps off forever. The world was plunged into darkness. There was no more rain. Fields withered. Wells ran dry. Rivers turned to dust. People began to die. The sun, which had always been generous with its light, now hid away behind thick clouds, refusing to shine through the gloom. The moon and stars, which had always guided travelers through the night, now turned their faces away, hiding from the dragon's fiery eyes. Even the wind, which had always whispered secrets through the trees, grew silent in the face of Vritra's terrible power. The dragon of darkness had sucked all the joy out of the world. Hope seemed lost forever. Now, this tale has been told and retold countless times throughout history, each retelling adding another layer of complexity to the myth. And yet, at its heart, the story remains the same. A story of a world plunged into darkness, A world without water, a world without hope. In some tellings, Vritra's reign of terror lasted for 36 years, a lifetime in human terms. And throughout this time, the world suffered. Crops failed, animals perished. People grew weak and desperate. They searched for a way out of the darkness, but none could be found. Vritra had sealed the rivers with his jaws so tightly that not even the gods could pry them open. It seemed as though the dragon of darkness would rule forever. In other versions, the dragon's wrath lasts only for 7 years. It's a shorter, harsher penance, but one that drives the point home just as effectively. For what is 7 years but a blink in the eye of eternity? How can anyone hope to survive such a long drought? And yet somehow they did. People clung to life as Vritra tightened his grip on the rivers. He dug deep into the earth for water. They wove spells to coax the rain from the sky. They prayed to the gods to end the dragon's tyranny. And all the while Vritra watched, amused by their feeble attempts to escape his grasp. He knew that he had them trapped. But why? Why did he do it? Well, that depends on the telling. In some versions, Vritra is simply a force of nature, an embodiment of drought and famine. He doesn't think or feel anything. He just is. In others, he is a malevolent spirit, a demon who delights in the suffering of others. And in yet others, he is a misunderstood creature, a victim of circumstance, who lashed out at the world out of desperation. Truth is, we don't know, and perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the story isn't about finding an answer. Perhaps it's about facing the darkness within ourselves, the darkness that can consume us when we lose faith in everything. But let's get back to our story. Desperate times call for desperate measures. So when the drought dragged on year after year, the people did something they had never done before. They went to the king and demanded that he find them water, any water, even if it meant going to war with the dragon of darkness. The king knew this was a dangerous request, but what choice did he have? His people were tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of living in fear. They wanted to fight back against the dragon of darkness. And so the king assembled an army and marched them to the edge of the kingdom where Vritra had his lair. Now here's the thing. No one had ever seen the dragon of darkness up close. Not while he was awake, anyway. Everyone knew that Vritra was immensely powerful, but no one knew the true extent of his powers. And as the army approached his lair, they realized just how dangerous their enemy really was. Vritra wasn't just a dragon, he was a god. Lightning crackled around him as he reared his head back and unleashed a roar that shook the very foundations of the world. The army panicked, but the king stood firm. He knew that he couldn't defeat Vritra with brute force alone, so he had to try something else. The king took a deep breath, steadied himself, and spoke in a voice that boomed across the land. Vritra, dragon of darkness, I challenge you to a contest of strength. If I win, you will release the rivers and allow my people to live. But if you win, then I will give up my kingdom and leave the land without a king. What say you? Now, normally a wise ruler wouldn't put his kingdom on the line like this. But these were desperate times. The people needed water. The crops were failing, and the sun refused to shine. Besides, the king had a secret weapon, one that he was sure would bring him victory. Vritra snorted, amusement dripping from his nostrils. You dare challenge me, little king? Very well, I accept your challenge. But choose wisely, for your prize will be hard to win. The king smiled, confident in his victory. So be it, he said. Let the games begin. Now, the first game Vritra proposed was a test of strength, a battle of wits, a contest of endurance, a race across the mountains, a duel of deception, a test of skill, a competition of speed. The king won every single one, and yet Vritra remained unfazed. He merely smiled, a smile that promised doom. And when the final game was announced, the king understood why. The last game was a test of divine favor, a test of faith, a challenge to the gods. Vritra roared, calling down lightning to split the sky and thunder to shake the earth. Who needs water when you have the power to control the weather? He shouted, his voice echoing across the mountains. Submit, little king, and I will spare your life. But the king stood firm, drawing upon the power of the gods to shield himself from the dragon's attacks. I will not submit, he cried back, for my people need water, and I will not rest until they have it. As the battle raged on, the king grew weaker. His shields shattered, his armor dented, his body bruised. But still he fought on, fueled by the love for his people, the belief in their cause, and the knowledge that he had to win. And just when he thought he might die, something amazing happened. The sky cleared, the sun peeked through the clouds, and a gentle rain began to fall. The people cheered, for they knew that the king had won. And when Vritra saw that the gods were on the king's side, he knew he was beaten. With a final roar of defiance, he released the rivers and retreated into the mountains. And so the drought came to an end, and the land was once again blessed with water. The people rejoiced, celebrating the king's victory with feasts and festivals. But deep down, they knew that they owed their survival to more than just the king's bravery. They owed it to themselves, to their refusal to give in to despair, to their belief in the power of community, and to their unwavering hope for a better future. That, my friends, is the story of how the world learned to survive the dragon of darkness. Do you believe in the power of hope? Do you think we can overcome any obstacle if we just believe in ourselves? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, stay tuned for more updates. Thank you for listening, and have a great day. From the heights of heaven, the gods too looked down. They saw the parched land, the fading mortals, the mountains cracking apart, and they debated. "We must do something," said one god. "But what can be done?" sighed another. "Vritra is too strong. If he rages, he will swallow even the sky," a timid god muttered. Their murmurs spread through the heavens. But the longer they spoke, the greater their fear grew. Each sought excuse to withdraw. The god of fire claimed he must guard the sacred flame. The god of wind argued that if he unleashed himself, he might sweep away all mankind. The sun turned his face aside, his rays weaker than ever. None dared face Vritra, for all knew one lash of his tail could shatter mountains. His gleaming fangs like 1,000 blades, his breath hot enough to burn forests. He was death incarnate, eternal night itself. The gods were powerless, and mortals were left in despair. They watched with horror as drought and famine swept across the land. Cattle died, crops withered, rivers ran dry. People grew thin and weak, their faces etched with misery. But amidst this desolation, there lived a man named Bali. His skin was bronzed by the sun, his muscles corded with strength, his eyes burned with fierce determination. Every day he did his best to help his people. He shared his little food, consoled the sick, and carried water from distant hills. Even when the journey took him deep into the forest where the demon Vritra lived, Bali never flinched. To him, his people's suffering was more terrifying than any demon. One evening, exhausted from a long day of carrying water, Bali sat by the edge of a dried-up river. As the last rays of sunlight faded away, he looked up at the sky. There, instead of the familiar stars, he saw only swirling blackness. Then he heard a voice, deep and resonant, echoing the fear in his heart. "Another day has passed, and still no rain. Soon there will be nothing left for you to save. Why struggle so hard, mortal? Join me and rule over this wasteland. Together we will be invincible." Bali looked up, his gaze meeting the demon's glowing eyes. He saw Vritra, the embodiment of darkness, and felt a chill run down his spine. Fear threatened to overwhelm him, but then he straightened his shoulders. He would not let terror cloud his judgment. He would stand against the darkness, not because he thought he could win, but because it was the right thing to do. "I will not join you, Vritra. You have caused enough pain." Here. With that, Bali stood up and raised both hands. In that moment, lightning flashed and thunder roared. Rain, heavy and life-giving, poured from the sky. Vritra roared in anger, his form flickering like a dying flame. As the rain washed over the parched earth, Bali continued to stand against the demon, drawing strength from the renewed hope in the hearts of his people. But though the storm raged, Vritra remained. His eyes burned with an eerie light, and his roar shook the ground. Suddenly, with a speed that defied the eye, Vritra lunged. His massive paws swiped at Bali, sending him crashing into the mud. But Bali was not finished. Summoning every ounce of strength within him, he rose to his feet. He could not defeat Vritra, but he could delay him by time for the rain to revive his people. And so, the battle continued. Bali dodged Vritra's snapping jaws, parried his swiping claws, and countered with all the strength he possessed. Yet as the hours passed, he grew weaker. His muscles ached, his vision blurred, and the demon's enraged bellows echoed in his ears. Just as Vritra prepared to deliver a final crushing blow, Bali stumbled, his knees buckling beneath him. He looked up at the demon, a wry smile touching his lips. "It's over, isn't it?" he whispered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. But then something extraordinary happened. From the depths of the forest, hundreds of pairs of eyes ignited, glowing like embers in the gathering dusk. They rushed out of the trees, a torrent of strength and fury. Leading them was an old man with eyes like burning coals and hair that flowed like a silver waterfall. Behind him came mighty warriors, each more imposing than the last. At their head, Bali recognized the gods, their forms radiant, their eyes blazing with righteous power. At the sight of these divine beings, the forest trembled. The animals cowered, and even Vritra hesitated. "Dali, child of man, your courage has touched our hearts. Now we shall finish what you have started." With that, the gods surged forward. The god of wind, his form a whirlwind of celestial power, slammed into Vritra, sending the demon sprawling. The god of thunder cracked his whip, each snap echoing like the shattering of mountains. The god of fire unleashed bolts of searing energy, forcing Vritra to coil his serpentine body into a tight ball. And the sun god, his golden arrows blazing, pierced the darkness, driving Vritra back. The forest floor trembled as the mightiest of the gods, Indra, king of heaven, charged forward. Wielding his thunderbolt, he struck Vritra, each blow shaking the very foundations of the world. The demon roared in pain and rage, his enormous form thrashing about, seeking a way out. But the gods held firm, their combined strength forming a barrier against the encroaching darkness. As the battle raged, the rain intensified, washing over the land, reviving the thirsty earth, filling the dried-up rivers. The people emerged from their homes, their faces a mixture of awe and gratitude. They had watched in despair as drought and famine ravaged their homeland. But now they witnessed something far more wondrous, a battle between gods and demons, a struggle between light and darkness. Amidst the chaos, Vritra lashed out, his tail smashing into the ground, sending shockwaves that knocked the gods off their feet. Seizing the moment, he lunged towards Indra, his fangs bared in a snarl, but Indra was ready. With a swift movement, he brought his thunderbolt down on Vritra's head. A blinding flash of light erupted, followed by a deafening roar. The forest fell silent. When the light subsided, Vritra was gone. In his place stood a lone figure, his form shimmering, his eyes blazing with celestial fire. It was Indra, the king of heaven, his form radiating the combined power of the gods. Turned to Bali, who stood amidst the ruins of the destroyed village, his body battered, his spirit unbroken. "Bali, son of man, you have shown valor beyond measure. Your bravery has saved not only yourself but all of mankind. As a token of our gratitude, we shall grant you a boon. Ask, and you shall receive." Bali looked at the gods, his heart filled with gratitude. But his gaze fell on the devastated village behind him. He thought of his people, their faces haggard with hunger and thirst, their bodies weakened by days without food. He knew what he had to ask for. "O gods, I ask for the well-being of my people. I ask for the prosperity of our land. I ask for rain to water our fields and food to fill our granaries." His voice echoed with the hopes and dreams of his people. The gods listened, their faces grave. They understood Bali's request was not for personal gain, but for the common good. And so they granted his wish. From that day forth, the land knew no more famine or drought. Crops grew tall and heavy, rivers flowed with crystal-clear water, and the sun shone brightly in the cloudless sky. As for Bali, he continued to serve his people, not as a demigod, but as a beacon of hope, a symbol of courage in the face of adversity. And whenever the people faced hardship, they remembered the tale of how a simple man had stood against a demon, and with the help of the gods had saved them all. This story is from the Indian state of Rajasthan, a place where most people survive on farming. But this time the crops have failed, and there is no rain. The sun is blazing, and the only sound you can hear is the sound of wind blowing through the dry fields. You can also see birds flying overhead. Their chirping has turned into a mocking laughter for the villagers, It seems as if nature herself is making fun of them. There's no water anywhere. The nearest well is more than 2 kilometers away from here. But the villagers are too thirsty. They don't care. They leave their homes and move towards the well. Some of them fall midway, never to get up again. Some reach the well, but they do not have the strength to pull up the bucket. Even the animals are suffering. You can see cattle, goats, camels, all suffering equally. There is no fodder, no water, just sand and the scorching heat of the sun. People don't know what to do. They're afraid of this scorching heat. They are also afraid of the hunger, and above all, they are afraid of the dark. Why the dark? What is so scary about the dark? We'll tell you. You must have heard of nights in summer, how pleasant they are. But here in these parts, the night is scary. In the night, the temperature drops. Cool breeze starts blowing, and suddenly the body feels very weak. Villagers say if anyone ventures out in the night, he or she would be possessed by evil spirits. For generations, they have been living with this fear. Now let's come back to the present. The condition of the villagers is pitiable. The fields are dry, the cattle are skinny, the children are crying, and the parents are clueless. How can they save their children? What can they do to fight this drought? This is when the sarpanch, or the head of the village, decides to do something drastic. He calls an emergency meeting. All the villagers gather in the courtyard of the panchayat building. Their faces are dusty, their clothes torn, but their eyes are shining with the hope of a miracle. The sarpanch addresses them, "My brothers and sisters, we have suffered enough. We can't take it anymore. Now we must do something." The villagers murmur in agreement. The sarpanch continues, "We have 2 options before us. Either we migrate, or we make this place habitable." A murmur runs through the crowd. The sarpanch raises his hand for quiet and says, "We cannot leave our fields. Our forefathers died here. Our religion lies here. We will make this place habitable again. But how? By bringing rain." The villagers cheer. Yes, they want rain. They want to make this place habitable again. But how? The sarpanch announces. "We have a team of 3. They will go to the neighboring town and bring back experts who will make it rain." The villagers cheer again. This is their only hope now. If it doesn't rain, they will all die. But why does it have to rain? Why can't they survive without water for some more time? Because water is not just essential for drinking and cooking, it is essential for survival. If it doesn't rain, the crops will wither. If the crops don't grow, the cattle will die. And if the cattle die, how will they till the fields? Without water, they won't survive. But still, the question remains, how will they make it rain? Will their crops revive? And most importantly, will they survive? Meanwhile, the 3-member team is on its way to the neighboring town. They are desperate. They need help. They meet a government official, but he refuses to listen to their tale of woe. He's busy on his phone. Then they meet a revenue official, but he, too, is not interested. He tells them to go to the next town. The team is dejected, but where else can they go? They try a local priest, but he, too, turns them away. All they get is a handful of ashes and a copper vessel. The team returns home empty-handed. All the villagers gather once again. This time, there is tension, anger, and disappointment in the air. The sarpanch asks for quiet and says, "We did everything we could, made all the efforts, but God didn't listen to our prayers. We've been abandoned." People start crying. This time they had pinned all their hopes on the 3-member team. Now it seems their fate is sealed. The old are worried about their future. The young are angry. A group of young men gathers. They are furious. They blame the officials for their plight. They raise slogans against the government. Soon, stones start flying. The police arrive, and the protesters are arrested. The next day, the sun is blazing. The sky is clear, not a single cloud. People are listless. They trudge through the sand, their heads down, their shoulders slumped. Suddenly, one of the villagers notices a little girl holding up a copper vessel. She is walking towards the center of the village. The villagers gather around her. Where is she going? What is she doing? The little girl stops in the middle and raises the vessel. She looks up at the sky and says, "Oh God, please send rains. We are dying of thirst. Please save us," she cries. All the villagers join her. Their voices rise in unison. "Oh God, please send rains. We are dying of thirst. Please save us." But God is not listening. He is busy in his celestial abode. Only the mother of one of the children notices a dark cloud in the distance. A small smile appears on her face. She looks at the people around her and whispers, "Look, children, there is a cloud in the sky." The villagers look up. Their voices die down. There is a cloud. It is dark and ominous, promising water and life. But it is far away. The villagers wait. The cloud grows darker. People's faces light up. The cloud reaches them, pours. It pours and pours. The parched earth drinks the water. The trees sway in delight. The flowers open their buds. Birds fly back. It is as if nature has come alive again. People dance in the rain. They sing in the rain. They laugh in the rain. It is the sweetest music to their ears. After so many days, they feel cool, fresh, alive. The long-awaited monsoon has finally arrived. So what if some people migrated? So what if some others lost their lives? Crops have revived. Life is good. All is well. But is it really all well? Do the villagers understand why it rained? No, they don't. They think the Almighty has heard their prayers. But the truth is otherwise. Monsoon is a natural phenomenon. It occurs every year. Why didn't the villagers know it would rain? Because they were blind. They couldn't see beyond their misery. They couldn't see the possibility of things getting better. And what happened because of that? They suffered needlessly. They were so sure that nothing could help them that they didn't even bother to look up at the sky. If only they had done that, they would have known that the clouds were gathering on the horizon. If only they had done that, they wouldn't have wasted their energy and time in futile pursuits. The same thing happened in Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia. People suffered through droughts and famines for years. Why didn't they know that the rains would return? Because they were afraid. Afraid to look at the reality. Afraid to believe in the possibilities. They couldn't see beyond their misery. Experts had warned them years back that this would happen. El Niño, which usually brings heavy rainfall to South America, had hit Africa that year. So everyone knew that this time the rains would be erratic and the harvest poor. But the governments failed to warn the people. The governments failed to prepare them for the worst, and the people failed to prepare themselves. And what happens when that happens? When people fail to prepare themselves for adversities? When they live in denial? When they refuse to accept the reality? That is when they suffer needlessly. That is when they waste their resources, energy, and time. That is when they lose their loved ones, their homes, and their lives. But what can they do to avoid such situations in the future? How can they prepare themselves? Well, they can start by accepting the reality, accepting that sometimes nature is just being nature. Sometimes the rains won't return for years. Sometimes the harvest will be poor. Sometimes their cattle will die. Accepting the reality and preparing for it is essential for survival. Otherwise, they will continue to suffer needlessly. The heavens were not only black, they were heavy as stone. They pressed upon shoulders, upon hearts, upon every breath. Night followed night, day followed day, unchanged. People began to forget the feel of rain, the sound of thunder, the joy of overflowing rivers. It was as if each soul were sealed in a clay jar of darkness with no escape. And at the top, Vritra lay swollen, hoarding the rivers, chuckling deep in his throat. The world was like a chessboard frozen in place. Every move blocked. No piece dared stir. Then one day, far away on the horizon, a single figure stirred. He stretched out an arm, a massive arm, a dark arm, and threw a stone. The stone flew up higher and higher, piercing the dark sky, leaving a white trail behind it. Higher and higher until it hit something, crashed against it, shattered against it. A mighty roar echoed across the land. The figure stood there, breathing heavily, and waited. And when he saw what had happened, he laughed. A great booming laugh that shook the earth. For the stone had struck the jar lids, and one of them had flown off. Our hero's name was Purorovus. He lived in the time of the great deluge, the time when all the creatures had taken refuge in the belly of the fish, Matsya, the first avatar of Vishnu. Purorovus was a hunter by trade. His bow was always strung, his arrows razor sharp. But now, when the rains fell, when the floods came, even he had laid down his weapons. Now he sat by the riverbank, watching the water rise, waiting for the end of the world. But while everyone else despaired, he kept his spirits up. Why should the deluge bother him, he thought. So long as there are fish in the waters, there will be sport. So he fished. Each day he caught a new variety of fish, cooked it over a fire, ate it with relish. Sometimes he shared his catch with others, but most times he just watched the floodwaters rise, uncaring. He noticed that some people started looking at him askance. They whispered about him, shaking their heads. "Ooh," they said. "He does not know what is coming," but he paid them no heed. Let them mock him, he thought. Let them sneer. Soon enough they would come crawling to him. Sure enough, soon enough, all the fish in the waters were swept away by the rising waters. Only then did people remember the stories of old, the stories of the avatars of Vishnu. They remembered how he had lifted the burden of the churning of the sea from the back of the great turtle, Kurma, and how he had killed the demon king, Bali. Some prayed to Vishnu, some prayed to Shiva, some jumped into the flood waters and drowned themselves. But pure Rovus remained unmoved. One day, when the waters were at their peak, he was awakened from sleep by the sound of laughter. It was the sound of a flute. Wondering what it meant, he walked toward the sound. It led him to the riverbank, where he found a beautiful young man playing a flute made of bamboo. The young man was the personification of Vishnu, and his flute played such enchanting music that all living beings on earth, all the birds and beasts, all the reptiles and demons, all the humans and gods, all were drawn towards him. And among them was Prauhad. Leaving aside his fishing rod, he ran towards the divine musician. When he was close enough, he could hear every note of the flute, and he knew that this was no ordinary mortal who played it. And so he fell at the musician's feet and said, "Who are you? What is your name?" And the musician spoke, "I am the fourth avatar of Vishnu, the preserver. My name is Buddha." Hearing this, Pururovus prostrated himself before Buddha. Then he looked up and asked, "When will the deluge end?" "We are all tired of eating fish." And Buddha said, "Wait here for me and I will show you." Saying this, Buddha vanished in thin air. Meanwhile, the world continued to suffer. Days turned into years, years into decades, yet there was no sign of the flood receding. Trees floated past, animals clung to them, birds perched atop, all swept along by the current. Suddenly, the ground beneath Pururovus' feet trembled. Looking around, he saw Buddha standing there once again. This time, however, he was not alone. With him were Garuda, the king of all birds, and two other celestial beings. As soon as the great flood receded, all four of them boarded a mighty bird, a bird so large it was like a flying island. The bird was called Pushpaka, and it was driven by Garuda himself. They soared into the sky, higher and higher, until the earth became very small below them. Looking down, Buddha pointed to a particular spot and said, "There you will find everything that you need." Then he dropped a magical herb into the waters below. The herb sank into the water and disappeared from view. The four travelers then flew away. Pururovus wasted no time. He dove into the water and swam toward the spot that Buddha had indicated. There, in the bed of the dried-up river, he found the herb. It was round, red, and smooth to touch. Taking it in his hands, he felt its life force throb with energy. Then he took a handful of soil from that spot, wrapped both the herb and the soil in his loincloth, and swam to the shore. There he planted the herb and watered it with the soil. So the very next day the herb sprouted and grew into a huge banyan tree. Under its branches, Pururovus built himself a hut and lived there. Now whenever any human or animal passed by, he would offer them food and water and make them rest under the tree. All the birds that had survived the flood, exhausted and starving, would flock to the banyan tree. They would eat the fruit and drink the nectar and preen themselves on its branches. In time, the banyan tree became a huge forest, and the forest became a shelter for all living things. As for the people who had mocked him, Pururovus showed them the magical banyan tree and told them the story of Buddha's visit. They realized their folly and repented. Then Pururovus divided the forest among them. "Take as much as you want," he told them, "and live as you please." But after a few days, he saw that they were still unhappy. Even though they had plenty of food and no enemies, they were bored. Everyone sat listlessly around, and there was no joy in anything. Seeing this, Pururovus felt sorry for them. He went to see Buddha once again. This time, however, he did not find him by the river. Instead, Buddha was seated on a nearby hill, deep in meditation. Pururovus sat down before him and said, "Respected Lord, I have done as you instructed. I have planted the herb, but people have become bored, Nothing makes them happy. What should I do? And Buddha said, give them work. Saying this, he disappeared. This time, Puravas did not wait. He immediately announced, whoever helps us build a city here will get a plot of land and a beautiful house and all the gold and jewels they want. Hearing this, people were overjoyed. At once, men and women, young and old, all set to work. They cut trees, brought fruits, built houses, dug wells, made gardens. They worked all day and feasted all night. And within a few months, they built a magnificent city. It was bigger than any city that had existed before the deluge. When Buddha returned, he was pleased with what he saw. He blessed the city and its inhabitants and disappeared. And soon after, the celestial beings arrived to take him back to Vaikuntha. But when they learned that he had given away his body at the time of the deluge, they were very upset. How could they bring back an intangible body? But Buddha simply smiled and said, do not worry, I will return. Then he vanished. Sometime later, Puravas heard a familiar sound, the sound of a flute. He knew that Buddha had returned, so he left the city and walked towards the river. There, on the bank of the river, he saw a majestic figure playing a flute made of bamboo. It was Buddha, but he was no longer the young man that Puravas had seen before. And as the sun rose higher and higher in the sky, Puravas knew that he would never see Buddha again. But as he turned to go back to the city, he heard Buddha calling out to him, hey Puravas! And Puravas turned around and said, yes, Lord, what is your command? And Buddha said, live happily. That, my friends, is the story of how Buddha saved the world after the deluge, and how Puravas became the first man to settle on earth after the great flood. And that's the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like. Also, don't forget to subscribe so that you get notified each time we upload a new episode and we have a request. This platform has begun to censor our videos, which means that many of you are not able to watch our videos. Therefore, to watch all our videos without any censorship, subscribe to our channel. And to those of you who have already subscribed, we thank you, and we promise to keep entertaining and educating you with stories from our ancient texts. And then, within that suffocation that seemed eternal, another sound arose. Not the cry of mortals, not the growl of the dragon, but laughter. It echoed, booming, like thunder bursting in the sky. It rolled through the black clouds, making them tremble, crack apart. It stirred the hearts of mortals who lifted their heads, whispering, who laughs so? Who dares to laugh in the face of this darkness? That laughter belonged to none other than Indra. I hope you enjoyed this story. Now let's try and understand what it means. Okay, everyone. So what do we see happening in the story? The dragon has eaten the sun. The whole world is in darkness. People are afraid. They're scared. They don't know what to do. And just at that time when everybody's losing hope, when it seems that nothing can be done, that's when we hear a sound. What is that sound? Laughter? Can you imagine how the mortals must have felt when they heard that laughter? For one thing, they were surprised. Where is that laughter coming from? Who is laughing in such a dark time? Second, there was something in that laughter that gave them hope. Now, in order to understand the meaning of the laughter, we need to look at who is laughing. And if you notice, the laughter belongs to nobody other than the king of gods, the leader of the gods, the head of the divine society, strongest among the deities, and that is Indra. So when Indra laughs, when we have Indra on our side, we have nothing to worry about. Why? Because Indra is the god of rain, controls the weather. If the sun is eaten by the dragon, no problem, we have Indra. If the whole world is plunged into darkness, no problem, we have Indra. If the dragon feels hungry and decides to gobble up the moon as well, no problem, we have Indra. So what exactly does his laughter mean? Laughter means courage, confidence, power, strength. In short, his laughter means victory. The moment the mortals heard that laughter, their faith was restored. Their belief in the divine was reignited. They knew that as long as they had faith, as long as they believed, everything would be fine because they had the Lord of the Rain on their side. This laughter gave them strength to bear the darkness. It made them feel that, though the darkness may be prolonged, though the dragon might play with them for some more time, the ultimate victory will be theirs. You might think this is just a myth. These stories are not true. But I want to tell you that these myths have a deeper meaning. Let us try and understand it. All of us go through tough times in life, right? Sometimes things seem to be beyond our control. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations where the future seems dark. Sometimes problems pile up, and we feel we may not be able to handle them. Well, my friends, this is your reminder that you are never alone. You may not always see it, but there is always a force that is trying to help you. You may not always feel it, but there is always a light that is trying to reach you. Yes, sometimes the darkness may be prolonged. Yes, sometimes the dragon may eat up all the sunshine in your life. Yes, sometimes the problems may multiply, but don't lose heart. Keep your faith on, just like the mortals in the story. You may not always see a solution to your problems, but know this: a solution will be found. This laughter of Indra echoes in the core of your being. It tells you that you are stronger than you think. You have survived so much in your life, haven't you? You have overcome so many obstacles already, haven't you? You have braved so many storms in the past, haven't you? So this too shall pass. You have Indra inside you. You have the strength to tackle any situation. This laughter is telling you that the sun will shine again. The dragon may have eaten it for now, but it will come out of its belly someday. You may have lost your way in the darkness, but you will find the light again. You may be surrounded by fear and anxiety today, but tomorrow will be better. This laughter is a reminder that you should not give in to despair. No matter how bad the situation is, never lose hope. No matter how dark the night is, keep going. No matter how difficult the problems are, never surrender. And remember, this laughter is an encouragement to look within yourself. It is a call to discover your inner strength, to unearth your latent potential, to recognize your own divinity. Like the mortals in the story, you may complain and cry. You may get tired of waiting and wondering, when will this end? When will the sun return? When will the dawn break? But remember, the sun will return, the dawn will break. And when it does, you will realize that it was worth the wait. This laughter is also a reminder that we should not be afraid of challenges. Challenges are a part of life. Obstacles are there to test your strength. Problems are there to prove your power. Don't shy away from them. Don't run from them. Instead, face them. Problems are the stepping stones to success. Challenges are the milestones on the path of progress. Every great achievement is preceded by great challenges. Every big victory is preceded by intense battles. So don't be afraid of challenges. Embrace them, accept them, laugh at them. And when you do, you will realize that there is nothing to be afraid of. My friends, life will always have its ups and downs. There will be sunshine, and there will be storms. There will be laughter, and there will be tears. But remember, laughter is the best revenge. When the dragon tries to put you down, when the dragon tries to make you feel low, that's when you have to laugh. Laugh at the dragon. Laugh at the darkness. Laugh at your problems. Believe me, your laughter will have the power to destroy the dragon. Your laughter will bring the sunshine back. Your laughter will light the lamp of hope again. So whenever you face a challenge in your life, whenever you find yourself in a difficult situation, whenever you feel like giving up, remember the laughter of Indra. Remember that you have the strength to overcome every obstacle. Remember that you have the power to achieve your goal. Remember that you have the ability to create your own sunshine. I hope you liked this story. The sage, whose eyes had witnessed the end of time, had prophesied long ago that the death of the cosmos would be heralded by 3 signs. The last of these signs was the one that troubled him the most, for he had seen it only once before, millennia ago. When he was still but a young student learning the ways of the universe from his master, he had seen it on the face of the destroyer, when the Lord of Death had approached his master to claim him after a long and illustrious life. But the sage had never expected to see this sign again, certainly not in this context, certainly not now. When the end of time had come, and the very fabric of reality was disintegrating into nothingness. But there it was, that same look on the face of the dying cosmos, a look that was both resigned and mocking. And as the sage watched, the cosmic wheels ground to a halt. Stars turned cold and dead, planets lost their orbits and drifted aimlessly through the void. Galaxies that had spun and swirled in graceful patterns for eons collapsed into themselves. Black holes devoured the last vestiges of light and heat. The great celestial dance came to an abrupt and terrible end. The music of the spheres fell silent. The sage looked up at the darkening sky and sighed. Time was running out. Only one sign remained before total oblivion, the laughter of the gods. When the world lay silent in despair, when even the gods shrank away, there came a sound unlike all others. Laughter. It was not mocking. It was not mad. It was a laughter resounding, mighty, that made the darkness itself shiver. From the summit of heaven it rang, rolling like thunder, stirring even the coiled clouds. And it was the laughter of Indra. Indra, the king of gods, whose name echoed with the power of 1,000 storms, whose eyes blazed with celestial lightning, whose voice boomed with the majesty of the cosmos. He laughed, and his laughter shook the very foundations of the dying world. The sage had known this moment would come, but he had hoped against hope that maybe, just maybe, the prophecy could be averted. Now he realized his folly. There was no escape from fate. Not even the gods could alter the immutable laws of existence. They too were subject to the relentless march of time, the inevitable heat-death of the universe. But why? Why was Indra laughing? Was he too mocking the pitiful creatures who had inhabited this dying world? The sage pondered this as he made his way through the deserted streets of a once great city. Gone were the sounds of life, the murmur of voices, the clatter of industry, the songs of birds. All was silent now, save for the wind that moaned through the empty buildings like a lost soul. He reached the outskirts of town and stopped. For him stretched the endless expanse of the desolate landscape. Fields lay trampled and barren, forests stood stripped and stark, mountains loomed bare and lifeless. The world was dying, and with it all hope of salvation. The sage turned back, his heart heavy with the weight of ages. He had sought wisdom in the stars, in the whispers of the ancients, in the depths of his own being, but had found no answers. None. Then he heard it again, that echoing laughter, closer now, as if it had taken on a life of its own and come to find him. He looked up, and there it was, a figure standing on the horizon, silhouetted against the dying light. And as the figure grew larger, the sage saw that it was human, or had once been human. But now the face was hidden behind a mask of polished bone, the body clad in garments woven from shadows. "Who are you?" the sage asked, his voice a mere whisper in the vast emptiness. "I am the one who has walked through the doors of death," the figure replied, its voice a hollow echo. "And what is your name, traveler?" "I am called the Seeker," the sage answered, "for I have sought wisdom and understanding throughout my life, but now it eludes me. I have seen the end of time approach twice before, and each time I failed to comprehend its meaning. I have studied the prophecies, yet they offer me no guidance. Tell me, O traveler, what is the meaning of this?" The figure approached, and the sage took a step back. "You misunderstand," the figure said. "It is not the end of time that you seek, but the end of yourself. You have lived a long and fruitful life. Seeker, and much wisdom have you gained. But now it is time to let go of your burdens, to cast off the shackles of your past and embrace the eternal silence." "But what of the prophecy?" the sage cried. "What of the laughter of the gods? Is there no hope of averting the fate of the cosmos?" "Hope is an illusion," the traveler replied, his voice a hollow echo. "There is no hope, only despair. And the laughter of the gods, it is not a sound of mockery, but a sound of farewell, a farewell to a dying world and to yourselves." The sage shuddered as he realized the truth of these words. He had mistaken the nature of his quest. He had sought answers in the wrong place. He was not meant to understand the end of time. He was meant to experience it. And as he experienced it, he understood that the laughter of the gods was not a sound of mockery, but a sound of release. As the traveler drew closer, the sage felt a strange calm settle over him. The fear and confusion that had clouded his mind dissipated, leaving behind a serene acceptance. He knew now that the end was not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. It was the final step on the journey of existence, the ultimate mystery to be solved, the ultimate silence to be contemplated. He closed his eyes and surrendered to the encroaching darkness, to the chilling touch of oblivion. And as he did so, he heard the laughter of the gods, not as a mocking echo, but as a solemn farewell. A farewell to the world, to the universe, to everything. The traveler reached out and touched the sage's shoulder, and in that moment, the sage knew that he was not alone. that he was part of something greater, that he was connected to the very fabric of existence. And as the darkness enveloped him completely, he understood. The laughter of the gods was not the end. It was the beginning. It was the sound of creation, the sound of new beginnings, the sound of eternity. For in the eternal silence, there was a seed of potential, a seed of possibility. And that seed was planted in the heart of the sage, in the heart of every living thing, in the heart of the universe itself. And so the sage, the traveler, and all of creation laughed together, laughed in the face of oblivion, laughed in the face of eternity. And their laughter echoed through the void, a testament to the indomitable spirit of existence. A celebration of life in the midst of death, a hymn to the cosmos in the face of oblivion. For in the end, it is our laughter that defines us, that defines our humanity, our connection to each other, and to the universe. It is our laughter that makes us truly alive, truly human, truly divine. And so the laughter continued, growing louder, more joyous, more triumphant, until it filled the entire universe, till it became the very essence of existence, until it was the only thing that mattered. Hey guys, this is me here with a question. What is the deal with all these names? The Nasadiya, Rigveda, Atharva Veda, all of these names can be really confusing when you first starting to study Vedic culture and the ancient Indian traditions. But what if I told you that the answer to all of these questions, the reason behind all of these names, could be found in just one verse from the Rigveda itself? So let's get started with our verse. It comes from the second mandala of the Rigveda hymn number 121, and it goes as follows. This is the real hymn. Listen to me carefully. There are many hymns in the Rigveda, but this is the real one. All the gods are afraid when death approaches, but he laughs. When men bow their heads in sorrow, he lifts up his head higher and drowns out their fear with his laughter. For him, there are no rich offerings of ghee or clarified butter, no feasts of flesh for him to eat. He is not enticed by gold or any other treasure. There is only a lake of Soma for him, which is placed before all humankind. For human beings, it causes dizziness, staggering steps, loss of awareness. For him, it is not wine. For him, it is the divine flame coursing through his veins. For him, there is no death. And sitting beside the lake of Soma, he drinks. And just to make sure we understand this verse, it is actually a metaphor. It's an analogy where it talks about the immortality of a person, the god in question. But it also answers the question from the title. Why does the hymn start with "This is the real hymn"?
Ask.
Because all of the other hymns in the Rigveda were composed by different sages at different times. But this particular hymn is considered to be the most important hymn of all, because it points to the truth. It points to the nature of reality. So who exactly is this great god that is mentioned in the hymn? Well, believe it or not, the answer could be found right in the first word. Many scholars have pointed out how the word Indra itself means not like the others, not like the other gods. And in this verse, we see why. When the other gods tremble at the approach of death, he laughs. He is not afraid. When mortals bow their heads in grief, he raises his head higher. He doesn't join them in their sorrow. He doesn't let their suffering bring him down. Instead, he drowns out their fear with his laughter. He doesn't have any of the typical characteristics of a god. He isn't concerned with sacrifices or offerings. He has no interest in riches or treasures. All that he cares for is the divine flame, the divine nectar, that courses through the veins of humankind. Now, some might think this is a strange choice for a god, but when we really think about it, this makes sense. After all, what is a god without his Soma? Or some may be thinking, Soma, what the heck are you talking about? There's no mention of a god named Soma in Hinduism. Well, don't be so quick to dismiss the idea. See, the word Soma itself is a metaphor. It means the divine essence that flows through everything. It's just like how the sun gives life to all living things, just like how water sustains all living things. In the same way, the divine gives meaning to all living things. The divine flame that is present in all people, all living beings, all of us have this spark of divinity inside of us, and that is what the metaphor refers to. It's the divine essence, the divine consciousness that runs through the veins of all of creation. To prove my point, we can look at another verse from the same hymn, and it says, "The gods approached Soma, besought him with a prayer, and he, hearing their words." entered into the body of the strong bull. So once again, we see the connection between the divine and the bull. The bull is not just any bull. It is the leader of the herd, the strongest, the most powerful bull, because it represents strength and power. And that is why it is chosen as the vessel for the divine to enter into. In fact, in ancient India, the bull was considered to be a sacred animal, especially the white bull, because it represented the divine. And it is interesting to note that even today, Hindus consider the bull to be a sacred animal, the vehicle of Lord Shiva, because it represents that same divine consciousness, that same divine energy. And if you still don't think that the two are connected, then let us look at one last verse. And this time it comes from the Puranas. And it says, "All the gods are afraid when Yama, the god of death, approaches, except Indra, for he knows that he is immortal. He laughs. He who is fearless laughs at death. Fear not death, for he is the god of immortality." Do you see how the same metaphor is used in multiple places to refer to the same divine being? Because the god of death is also the god of immortality. Yama is also Yamaraj. And he is also called Indra. But you may still be confused because you know that Yamaraj is not the same as Lord Indra, the king of the gods. Then what is the difference? Who is Indra and who is Yamaraj? Well, both of them are leaders. Both of them rule over their respective domains. But while Indra rules over the gods, Yama rules over the mortals. While Indra presides over heaven, Yama presides over the earth. Both of them have powers beyond the imagination of mortals. Both of them are known for their prowess, their strength, and their ability to inflict punishment. But Indra is a god of light, whereas Yama is a god of darkness. His realm is the underworld, and he is responsible for guiding the souls of the dead to their next destination. While Indra brings rain and nourishment to the earth, Yama brings death and decay to the earth. One is associated with the sun. The other is associated with the moon. One is associated with lightning. The other is associated with the wind. Both of them are forces of nature. Both of them are transcendental to our understanding. Both of them are eternal.